The most expensive decisions I ever made had nothing to do with the price tag. It's ironic, but they were the ones where I waited, thinking that waiting I could time a better opportunity, thinking that I went with a cheaper option than what I really needed, or just simply not being able to decide and missing the window. So I want to share a few stories with each of those, with how I've been burned in the past, so that hopefully you can get the lesson without needing the scar. This first one takes me back to when I was 17. I thought it would be a cool idea to build a mountain bike from scratch. I wanted to do like a frame up build, all like custom parts, and really make it my own piece by piece. So it was part of the accomplishment of building a bike from zero, also really making it my own, where you couldn't just buy it in a store. It was mine. But the issue that I ran into with that bike was that as I got into it, every key component that I needed was more than I could afford. I didn't realize that until I had this like idea that I was so far into it. I was so close to being done that it didn't make sense to now waste all of it just to go buy another bike. I just needed to finish it. Right? I was already invested. That sunk cost fallacy of, because I've spent so much, I'm forced to keep going down this path. But what had happened was, instead of being able to build the bike I wanted, I was forced to use second grade parts and second hand parts to really patch it and piece it together. And what that ended up costing me was not only more for the actual bike itself, but I had wasted days at the ski hill, at the resort, because my bike would break on the second or third lap and I couldn't get it fixed there. I had, so it's like wasted days in terms of not being able to ride the rest of the day, wasting money on the ticket, having to buy more expensive parts to replace the cheap ones that I'd just broken. The thing that I never could have realized until it had happened was that it cost me a severe injury. And to go into it a little bit, keeping it brief, I was pedaling up a ramp to go off of a drop, and then something happened with the chain. I can't remember if it was like the chain fell off or the chain broke or the derailleur hanger, whatever it was, essentially caused me the pedals to skip on that last pedal stroke before I set up for the drop. And it shot all of my weight forward and sent me head first off of this drop. So I landed right nose, like head first at the bottom of the landing, and just head contact. So I broke my bike and hit my head so hard. I remember like I blacked out. I was so nauseous. It was severe. I ended up being able to walk it off, but like the day was done, the week was done. I didn't even finish the rest of the lap. Like I spent the next hour and a half just walking back to the village, because I was like, I just am not getting back on that bike right now. I'm way too dizzy. I never would have realized that expense until it had happened, but it all could have been prevented if I had just invested in like a well-rounded, safe bike from the beginning, instead of thinking that I could just piece it together on my own, really out of pride. So it cost me time, it cost me frustration, and it also cost me a piece of my health. Like that is a crash I will remember forever. And it's not something that even really has a dollar value. Like that's a crash that could have been much worse, right? A headache, some nausea, pretty fortunate. But what I learned from that is that cheap is not necessarily saving. And it's like, what's driving our decisions, right? Like it's not saving us. It's just delaying the inevitable, or delaying the true cost, right? Like discounting the value without discounting the risk. And that was what I missed, was the risk of things that would come later. The second lesson that I want to share is really around this coach that I hired, thinking that if I hire a coach, my problems will go away. And I thought that the investment was for the solution, that I was removed from it if I just put money towards it. And that was a tough lesson to learn. $8,500. Spent $8,500 on this coach. And I went in with the wrong mindset. It was an expensive lesson to learn. I paid full price thinking that if I paid that much, I was certain to get the outcome. Not in my own conviction that I could do it, but that they would do it for me. And when I went into that program, that service, I thought, this is it. I no longer have to work. I no longer have to show up or put any effort in. Problem is done. And I made the incorrect association with expensive meaning automatic, or expensive meaning guaranteed. And that mindset cost me everything I spent and the time that I wasted with the lack of results that I got. Because as soon as I swiped the credit card, I absolved myself of any responsibility, which is a horrible lesson to learn. And this is not saying that coaches in general are not a good investment. Like, I am a coach. I make my living off of like raising and developing strong, competent leaders in the form of hockey athletes. So it's not necessarily that coaching is at fault. It's simply the mindset of just throwing money at a problem thinking it will go away. And I've experienced this in other more subtle ways. I feel like it's part of the process of learning as a business owner and an entrepreneur, that every level we get to, there's different problems to solve. There's the same problems that show up in different ways, right? Like, I even just recently ended up spending about $5,000. Oh, I'm just so uncomfortable even saying that still. About $5,000 on a contractor, thinking that portion of the business would be managed. I didn't factor in their training. I didn't factor in their level of competence. I didn't factor in the ongoing managerial role that I was taking on by bringing this contractor in, right? And then I simply thought, if I spend this money, the problem will go away, which is the wrong lesson to learn. So instead, now my filter is, if I spend this money, it will give me the opportunity and the clarity to learn what I need to know to then solve the problem. And the shift for me there is that it is still my responsibility to learn it. It is still my responsibility to show up and put in the effort. Simply putting money into a problem does not make the problem go away. But if it can help us change ourselves, change how we show up, or change what we know in terms of solving the problem, then the investment can be worth it. And the last example, simply, I cost myself by not deciding, by wavering, wishing, washing, even though it very likely would have been the right decision. And what had happened was, we were car shopping, and we had done enough homework to know what the market had, to know what was on the market, to really have that sense of like, okay, this is overpriced, this is underpriced, this is kind of mid-range, maybe if we negotiate. And there was one car, and it was like, we knew it. It was like, honestly, probably 6,000 or 7,000 underpriced for what the homework that we had done. It fit our needs. It was right in the wheelhouse, and we were like, yeah, should we go look at it? Yeah, okay, let's go look at it at the end of this week, right? It was like Monday, and the car was gone by Wednesday. It was like, we knew it. We hesitated. We got gun shy. We talked ourselves out of it. We didn't treat it with the level of urgency we needed to get the result that we wanted. And because of that, our hesitation became someone else's success. So just craft it up as like, I loved, I found something I loved at a price that made sense. That should be the end of that paragraph. The next sentence should be, I pulled the trigger and I got it. But not in this case. I hesitated, someone else bought it. And hesitation always feels like the rational thing to do. Like, oh, I'm just going to think it through. Then I'll know that I'm making the right decision. But life doesn't work like that. If you have 100% of the information, you would already have what you're looking for. If you had 100% of the context on the decisions that you're making with 0% of the risk, you wouldn't even be asking the question anymore. You would already have it. So anytime there's a decision to make, it's how much homework have we done? What can we know versus what can we not know, right? Every decision, there is an unknown on the other side of the decision that you need to make the decision to know. And that's what trips people up, is that they want to know everything before they commit. So instead what happens, we revert into thinking, hesitating, and this really, it's just what made it crystal clear for me to help me act and decide on things faster. If my gut says yes, go, is if we don't decide, we are handing that opportunity to someone else on a platter. We are handing it over to the person who is able to decide quicker. So what I've learned is, on one side, you cannot buy your way out of doing the work. And the other example is that hesitation doesn't protect you. It simply costs you opportunity. It simply hands over opportunity to someone else. Now, it feels like a bit of a tangent, of course, but what does this have to do with your player in the hockey space of all things? Well, today the window's open. And we hear it all the time, like, you're running out of time, you're running out of time. It's like, parents, I get it. Like, everyone is telling you that you're running out of time. But the reason they're saying it is not because they want to hurt you or because they want you to buy some gimmick. It's because they want you to understand the importance of how small this window is. 5 years seems like a lot of time until 5 years passes and nothing's happened. Because it's not like losing weight or switching careers, where in 5 years, you still have 5 years. It's like in 5 years, it's done. That chapter is closed forever. I think that's the importance of the weight, is that it is, with any sport, any pursuit of high-level sport, 99% of the time, or a large majority of the time, it is a one-shot deal. So one season later, you've lost ground. The gap is widening. 2 seasons later, the gap is structural, meaning now you have a clear divide between levels and opportunity. And that's on the macro, but we can even shrink this down to the micro. Do you wait for your off season to start until July? What about June or May? What if you're the type of player who thinks they don't need to wait for their off season to start before they really take on more training or more things? What if they're the type of person and the type of player who takes on things and starts learning right now, knowing that's what's going to project them farther ahead? Because if you wait for the off season, everyone is. How are you going to get ahead that way? Not making a decision is a decision on its own. Waiting is a decision. It just feels like not making it. And every story that I just told you has the same ending. I paid more for waiting by going cheap than I would have paid for doing it right the first time. With the bike, with absolving the responsibility and not having to do the work, and with the car, of simply just hesitating and getting trapped in my own mind when I knew it was the right decision. When the gut said yes, but I still felt like I had to wait to protect myself. I lost a good deal because of it. So the window doesn't wait for the budget conversation. It doesn't wait to see if you can squeeze it in. Because, I mean, what I've learned from the people who I have grown from the most is literally like, F around and find out. Like, they do it and figure it out later because they trust in themselves that there's always a way to figure it out. And I think it's that trust in themselves that they will find a way is what propels them so far forward, in tandem with them accessing the resources and coaching they need to propel themselves forward. It's a really interesting cycle. I'll make another video about it. But it comes down to them knowing they're going to find a way to make it work, making it work, and then it's this ironic thing that happens almost like clockwork every time that it works. Topic for another video. I know we're already at past 15 minutes. So I'm going to end it here. But it's expensive to be cheap. It's expensive to think that simply by putting money towards something without having to change ourselves, how we operate, how we work, is a recipe for disaster. And it's expensive to not decide. That's it for this video. If you haven't already, would love to see you hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Chat then.